How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I will be replacing the alternator in my 2008 Dodge Charger with the 3.5 liter V6. Now that is the same 3.5 liter V6 for the 2002s to 2010s in all the models across all the platforms for Daimler Chrysler. So if your alternator is going up and you need to replace it, this is the part number of the one that I got. I got that from Advanced Auto Parts. Now I can tell that my alternator is going bad. There it is down there. It's a little hard to see. It's on the passenger side up in the front. Now, like I said, I can tell mine is going bad because it is making a whining noise. And when I start to drive the car, the couple lights come on the dash and then go away and then come back, and go away and come back. So I know that it's not getting a very good charge. But let me start it up so you can hear the whine that I'm talking about. All right, everybody, we're starting it up so we can hear that whine. And there you go. You can hear the alternator whining a little bit. I'll rev it up. There you go. You can hear the whine a little more. Now I'll show you what it sounds like on the inside. You can hear that whining noise ever so slightly. And then if I rev it, it gets even louder. And then it goes away when RPM start to go back down. All right, everybody, now let's get started on replacing this alternator. Like I said before, it is a rather easy install and shouldn't take too long. But before we get started, we need to make sure that we've unplugged the battery, and I've already done that. So I'm going to go over what tools that we're going to need. Now, we're going to need a 3/8 drive for the tensioner right there. We need to loosen that so we can get the belt off. We're going to need a 15mm socket, and those are for the bolts that are on the alternator. You have one here, you got two below. And then there is another 15mm bolt back there on that bracket that you'll need to loosen so we can pull that bracket up out of the way to get the alternator out. And there's also a 13mm bolt that is down there underneath that cover right there, and that's for the power for the alternator. And then you need to take that wire plug off, and that's all you need to do to get the alternator off. Now, to get to the bottom bolts, it's a lot easier to get it from underneath. So you want to take the shield off and jack the car up and get those bolts from underneath. So let's get started. All right, we're going to start by pulling back on the belt tensioner pulley so we can get some slack in the belt to take it off. And like I said before, it's just 3/8 drive. I have a breaker bar here with a reducer on the end down to a 3/8. So let's pull on it, get some slack, and just slide the belt off. There we go. Now the belt's out of the way. We can start taking the bolts off to get that bracket out of the way, and then we'll go underneath and get the underneath bolts. All right, everybody, now that we have the belt out of the way, we're going to start with the top bolt that is right here. The easiest way to get to it is to go underneath the radiator hose, come in from the front, and there you go. All right, now that we got the bolt all the way loose, we need to get the back bolt, the other 15mm bolt from the back that holds the bracket on. We need to loosen that bolt up so we can move that bracket out of the way so we can get this front bolt all the way out. Now this back bolt is another 15mm bolt. I'm using a 15mm deep socket so I can get to it a little easier, because you got to put your hands down in here. Slide down and just start loosening it. Now that we got that bracket loose, we should be able to get this front bolt out a little easier. All right, we finally got the bolt out. There it is, really long, pain in the butt bolt, a little more pain in the butt than what I was expecting it to be. But since the bolt was so long, these wires were in the way back here. So what you have to do is you have to get it loose enough that you can get it by hand. And then the rest of the way, you need to just try and get it out by hand so you can try and pull these wires out, try and push these wires out of the way, because the bolt's going to go back there really far. So now that's done, we've got the back one loose so we can move the bracket around. We got to get this wire right down there for the power. Got to get that wire out. Now it has a red clip on it, but I accidentally broke the clip trying to get it off. Now once we get that wire out, everything's good to go from the top. Then we'll jack her up and get the rest of the stuff from the bottom. All right, everybody, I got the car jacked up, getting ready to climb underneath. Now, always make sure to be safe whenever you're working on a vehicle, especially when working underneath of it. Make sure you have your wheels secured on the opposite side that you're lifting. Make sure you got your jack stand, so in case the jack fails, you don't get crushed underneath the car. Now, I forgot to mention, on the Chargers, they have the cover that I took off right there. You can see that requires a 10mm socket and 4 bolts. One right there, 2, 3, and 4. Take them off, slide the cover out of the way, and then you can climb underneath and see what we got going on. Now, there's your alternator, there's your second and third bolt that you have to get off. And let's see if we can see the power. There you go. Underneath that little cap right there is going to be the ground for your alternator. And you got to pop that cap off right there so you can get the power line off the bolt. Let's pop it off real quick. There you go. You can see the bolt. Now the cap had 2 little tabs, one on each side. Just kind of like pinch them and pull it off. So let's get these last 3 bolts off and get this alternator out of here. All right, change of plans. Since that bolt was a little too long, I couldn't use the standard socket on there. And the deep socket was too long that it was hitting the heat shield behind it. So I'm actually having to use one of my 13mm wrenches to get it off. All right, everybody, as you can see, we have the alternator out. Now, please remember to be very careful when taking out these last 2 bottom bolts, because you have nothing holding the alternator in from the top. You just have these 2 bottom bolts holding it on. So when you're undoing that last bolt, please make sure that you have a hand or somebody up top kind of holding on to it so it doesn't just like fall down and hit you. We don't want that to happen. So now all you have to do is reverse the steps of getting it out. To get it back in, put the alternator in, get those 2 bolts to get it started, put the top bolt in, hook up your power wire, connect the electric, and you're good to go. All right, everybody, as you can see, the new alternator is now in. Full disclosure, it definitely was a little more of a pain getting it in than it was getting it out. The biggest pain was just lining up the bolts, because they are long threads, just lining them up and making sure they went into the holes nice and even. This bracket right here was just a big pain, because you had to get the bolt down back there behind the wires and then shove it through the bracket to be able to shove it through the alternator to get it to line up so you could screw it into the hole right there. Now, I took this out from underneath, but I installed it from up top. It definitely was a lot easier installing it from up top. You could have taken it out from up top. And if you take it out from up top, you're going to do the top bolt last. You're going to do the bottom bolts first, where I did it with the top bolt first and the bottom bolts last. But like I said, if you take it out and put it in from up top, all you got to do is undo the radiator hose from right there. Just be careful, you're going to lose some coolant. Move the radiator hose out of the way. We kind of just like zip tied it up over here to get it out of the way, and then you just set it down in there nice and neat. And like I said, you just had to feed the bolt down by the wires, feed it through the bracket, and then back up through the alternator, and then snug it down up top. And then you're able to go back underneath, line those holes up, tighten them down. Now make sure you don't crank everything down good and tight until you have everything lined up. Snug them down a little bit at first, then go back and tighten them down all the way. And then when you're done getting the alternator in, then you just have to go back and hook up your power wire right there, and then plug in the wires right there. After you're done connecting the wires, then put your belt back on, and then before you do anything else, check to make sure everything is on good and tight. All the wires are connected, your belt's back on properly. Reconnect the radiator hose. If you lost any fluid, make sure to top it off. Plug the battery back in, and then turn her on and see how she is. All right, the car is on. Don't hear it whine anymore, so I think we're good to go. I'm hoping that solved the problem. I didn't see any lights on the dash. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. If this video helped you out in any way, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and turn your bell notification on so you stay up to date on all my videos. I'm out. Everybody be safe.